Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create a simple login system like this where you can get like an admin page in your Express.js application. You can basically log out from that and basically visit probably like a user page and even log in, as you can see. And basically, if I try to take this URL, probably go into like a private window and paste that in, you can see that it brings me back to the login page. So I'm going to show you how you can use JWT, JSON Web Token, to actually authorize and authenticate your web applications in Express. JWT happens to be one of the most used ways to authenticate users within your React application or pretty much your Express server. Now, how do you create an Express server that uses JWT? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how you can go from scratch from building out your Express.js application to using JWT for your authorization or authentication. And then in this video also, we'll be using Postman API to actually test up everything. So this is just a brand new machine. I've not really set up anything other than installing Node.js. So if you don't have that, you can simply head over to pretty much any of the browser inside and simply type Node.js. Now, when you type Node.js, you should be able to get this first package right here because you'll be needing it. And for this video, we'll be using a simple JSON database kind of system. I don't want to go through many kind of database like using MongoDB or MySQL. So we'll be using some JSON data that we've set and use those JSON data to actually authenticate and do all of these things that we want. All right. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use JWT as well as using things called middleware in your Express.js application so that you can pretty much set specific routes to a specific user only. Let's say you have an admin and you have a normal user. You can basically say this route are only accessible to admins and this route are only accessible to the normal user using this JWT and the middleware that I'm going to show you in this video. So let's just get started. First things first is that I'm going to create a folder right here and I'm going to call that folder JWT Express. So when I click on the new folder, I'm going to call that JWT-Express there. So in there, you make sure it says Express. Now, this is the folder right here. The next thing I'm simply going to do is right click and open the terminal. And basically, if you're on Windows 11, I think it's the same way. Otherwise, you need to go over to this top right here and just type in CMD. Once you type in CMD, it is basically still going to open it in the terminal, just as you can see. So pretty much any one of them you decide to use, it's still the same thing. Right in here now, we simply want to start by installing the things that we need. And first thing we want to install is to install Express. But also we need to track all of the changes and the dependencies that we're making to Express. So what we're going to say is npm init-y. When we say npm init-y, it is going to create this package.json file for us where we can be able to track all of the dependencies and things that we're going to install. The next thing we simply want to do is start by installing pretty much every of the packages that we need. So I'm going to say npm I express. And basically, that is not only going to be the package we're going to install. We're going to install a lot more. Like take, for instance, we simply want to install the .env package also. We want to install something called JSON Web Token. So we can say JSON Web Token. Then when we say JSON Web Token, we simply want to install as well NodeMon, which is basically like a package that would restart our server pretty much anytime we do have like a change in our actual file. So we have npm express.env JSON Web Token NodeMon. And basically also we want to install a UUID in this case, just for instance, okay, I just want to install UUID. Now, if you hit the enter key, your browser or Node.js should pick that up and then start installing all of the necessary dependencies. And as you can see, we're done installing. The next thing I can simply do right here is, I don't know if this would work from the Windows terminal, but I normally do this on Linux. So if I say touch index.js, that should just create like a file for me, but I'm thinking it's not working here. I'm going to show you different ways to create your files actually. So when you have that, the next thing you simply want to do is to pretty much open that in your code editor of choice. I use VS Code and I'm sure you should be using VS Code also. So if you hit the code and a period after it, you can simply open up that project within VS Code. Now we are right here in VS Code and we can simply get started with the main things. I'm simply going to say trust the authors and then say yes, I trust. And now in here, we can simply see that we have our node modules folder, which contains all of the dependencies that we've installed. We do also have a package.json and a package log.json, which I think you should know what these do by now. In here, I can simply create a new file and I'm going to call that the index.js, which is going to be the main entry point for all our servers. Now take note guys that I have a few extensions that are making it look like this. As you can see, I have GitHub Copilot, which is like an AI helper. but we're simply not going to be using that much. If it gives us some suggestions just to make the work easier, we are obviously going to use those suggestions. And as well, you can see I have this theme and pretty much everything. I'm sure you've already customized your VS Code to your own liking. Now, the next thing I simply want to do is to go into my package.json file right here. And down here where it says scripts, I simply want to create two different scripts. The first script I'm going to create is the script using Node. So I'm going to simply say Node, and it's going to basically call this index.js file, which is right here. Now, after that, I simply want to call the next script, which is going to be the dev script. And this dev script is basically going to use the node-mon package. In here, this should be saying start, not script. So it should be saying start, and then here should be saying node, and then the dev script should be saying node-mon, still calling the same file. So here we've created a start script and a dev script. And if I should go back into the terminal and do npm run dev, basically what you get to see is that it starts with this node-mon package, and then you can see that it is basically running our index.js file. So if I should go into the index.js file and pretty much type in anything there like const express is equal to require express, which is the first thing you need to do in any Express application, you can see that it'll basically stop the script and then start it up again for us every single time we do make a change within that script. So moving on with our Express application, basically what we can start by doing is importing Express, and then we can create an app out of Express. So we say const app equals Express in this manner. And when we get this, the next thing we simply want to do is to actually list in for a port, and then use the port and get our Express application actually live with an actual URL so that we can visit it in the browser. So what I'm simply going to do is that I'm going to just give like some space right here, and I'm going to say const, and we want to say port is going to be equal to the process env port. And then basically, if there is no port, we're just going to default to using 3000. To make sure that this is working, there is the package that we need to require. So we need to require .env, and then we're going to simply run the config out of the .env package. Basically, all this would do is that it will look for our .env file, which is obviously going to be in this home default directory right here. When you have a .env file there, this package is basically going to read that and then bring in all of the details from it. So here I can have that we have a port, and this port most of the times is going to be port 3000. Now, in most cases, you might be having port 3000 started on your system already. But what we're going to do is, in case this one is covered, what we simply want to do is just change the port in here, and everything should be fine and working well. So in here, I can simply close the .env and make sure that this is set. Now, the next thing I simply want to do is to say const, and then what we use in this case is that we say app.listing, and basically we want the listing for the port. And if it happens to be so, we simply want to console.log that the server is running on this actual port that we have at the top right there. And finally, we simply want to close it and then also close our function right in here. So we're saying app.listing to this port, and if it's working there, it simply want to say server is running on port 3000. And with node-mon already running, what you can see right here is when we go back to the terminal, you can see that it says server is running on port 3000, which means it is actually working very well. So that is it. We have our server started. Now let's check it from a browser. If you should go into a browser and pretty much navigate to a new tab and visit localhost port 3000, you can see that it says cannot get /, which is just fine. I'm going to simply explain why it says cannot get /. But for now, whenever you do that and you go back and you see this, it means that your server is actually working very, very well. Now, the part right here, this home route, means that it cannot really find an endpoint for the home route. So you can just get this cannot get / error. If you should visit this with like a different method entirely, you're basically going to see something else. If I should use like a post method, you can see if to say cannot post this, and basically for all other methods like the delete and the puts and the patch. I'm sure you know this. If you don't know this, pretty much drop a comment down below saying I should explain the different type of HTTP request, and I'm simply going to explain that to you. Now, moving on. In here, in order to fix up that error, what we simply want to do is go down just a little bit after this, and we simply want to create our first endpoint. So if I say app.get, and anytime I go to the home route, which is obviously going to be a /, I want to call a simple arrow function. You can basically use a normal function, but in this case, you'll be calling an arrow function. And one of the good things you should always do with your arrow functions in Express is to make them async, because most times requests do take longer than they need to respond. So here we can use the REST method, which is like the second parameter within our function. And it has a bunch of things inside. As you can see, we have send, JSON, redirect, render, and I'm sure there are many more that you might not know, okay? Now, some of the other ones like append header also works in most cases. And there's something like a cookie, a fork, a destroy. They just have a lot of them at the same time. But in this case, we simply just want to use a basic send, and we can send a simple hello world right there. When we send the simple hello world message, if I come back to this page right here and give it a refresh, you can see that it shows me hello world. Okay, it shows me hello world, which means it is working. Now, basically, most of the times you don't want to be sending text like this into, you basically want to render a proper HTML page, right? So in this, I'm simply going to show you how you can get a proper HTML page and send it. Now, majorly, there are two ways. If you want to send a dynamic HTML page every single time, you need to use what we call a template. And I'm going to show you how you can add a template, popularly the one known as EJS, which I think is the most popular Express.js template. But there are also other ones like Jade and Handlebars, which you can use also. And as well, you can just pretty much send a static HTML file. But before that, let us do some other configurations to make sure that this is actually working well. Now, in your Express application, there's one thing that you need to do. You need to come to the top and say app.use. And it's very, very important when you start sending data from the front end of your application. So we can simply say express.json. And this basically would convert pretty much any JSON request that you send to your server to a format which Node.js can understand or which your server can understand. And now the next thing after this is that you want to also use app.use. And you basically want to use the express.url encoded and set the extended to true, which means that pretty much if you do send anything like form data into your Express server, it is also going to handle that properly and understand it properly. Now, the last part we need to do is to create an env file right here. Now, the last thing that we need to do right here is to basically create a public folder right here. So when you create a public folder, basically, this is the folder that is going to contain all of your client-side JavaScript, your client-side CSS, and pretty much things like images or pretty much any other files that you want to upload into your server. Everything right there will be saved on the public folder right here, which means it will be saved on the server side of your application, but also available to the client side if you need it. Now, down in here, we simply want to still use the same thing. And in this case, we simply want to import something at the top right here called path. So right here, I can simply say const path is going to be require path. Now you don't need to install path just like the way we installed express and .env, and it's because path is actually inbuilt with Node.js. So anytime you set up a new Node.js app, it always comes with path and pretty much some other packages by default. Now in here, what we simply want to do is to say app.use, and we want to use express.static, which basically is the method to call your public folder. And then we can simply say we want to take the path and then join it with something. So we say path.join. And we want to join the directory name, which is basically this directory right here. And also we are going to join the public folder after that. So when we have all those three set up there, now we are simply saying that anytime we do visit anything that requires it to be in the public folder, it is basically just going to load the public folder for us by default. And if that file is basically not on the public folder, it is then going to go into the routes and then start looking for what to load. So in here, what I can simply do is probably create one index.html file. And if I do create one index.html file, I can basically create like a simple boilerplate just by typing this colon right here and then put in this. And here I can simply put in like a h1 inside. So if I put in a h1 and say this is hello world from HTML. Now, if I should go back to the page, though you see hello world right here, if I do refresh this, you're going to see hello world from HTML. And basically this is because HTML or the index.html file happens to pretty much load every single time you visit any server, okay? You don't need to actually send it using the GET request. Anytime, as far as it's in the public folder, it is just going to load first. Now, this is okay if you do have like a static HTML page or probably you just want to host your HTML on Express, but this is not good for things that are going to be dynamic. There is no way we can send in content into this HTML. There's no how we can pretty much use this HTML for pretty much any other thing like server-side rendering. So I'm going to show you how you can now go ahead to create your own dynamic HTML from pretty much using EJS template language. Now back here at the terminal, we can simply cancel out by hitting Ctrl+C or Command+C on the Mac. And in here, we simply want to type in npm I EJS. Now, EJS happens to be the template language for Express, but like I said, you can use Jade, you can use Pog and Handlebars. These are different template languages that you can get within Express. So after that, you can simply go back to npm run dev to run your server. Now in here, what you simply need to do now is to come in here and create a new folder, and you're going to call this folder the views. instead of the views, you can basically take any HTML file and move it into the views folder. But this time around, you simply want to say it's index.ejs. Now, EJS allows us to do some embedded JavaScript within our views, which just makes a whole lot more sense. So right here, we can simply say this is hello world from EJS instead. Now, within our index.js application right here, we simply want to go to the top and say app.set. And we want to set what we call the view engine. And the view engine basically would automatically select EJS from our list of dependencies that we've installed right here. So in here, we can simply go down into the app.get and then uncheck it to remove the comment. And then instead of saying rest.send, we simply want to use the rest.render method. And all we need to do is render the index file that we've created. So when we say rest.render index right there, if I should refresh this now, you see that it works the same way. You get hello world from EJS. But the good thing about EJS is that we can simply come in here and pass in the second parameter, and then we can pass in something like a name, for instance. And in here, we can simply say the name is going to be Sahil, for instance. So if I should take that name variable right there, I can go into my index.ejs file, and basically I can append that pretty much after any other thing by calling the EJS syntax this way. If I put an equal to, basically it is going to echo out whatever I need in that space. So I'm going to say anti-bracket, %, with an equal to, and I'm going to drop in something like this. And basically all it will do is that it is going to convert that template right here into an actual code that is coming from our backend right here. So if I should change this to like maybe George and come back here and refresh, you can see that it says George. Basically, that is how you can create dynamic HTML using EJS templates. That is not something you can easily do with HTML, so take note of that. Now, right now, as you can see, we haven't started using our JWT, and it's because we simply want to create a simple JSON database where we can save like records of some users and then use these records to actually authenticate the users when it is needed. Now, for this, I simply want to create a different folder right here, and I'm going to call that DB. So in there, I'm simply going to create like my users.js. Now, in here, what I simply want to do is to say modules.exports, and basically, I just want to export an array. Now, in this array of users, basically what I want to do is I want to export an array, not an object. So in here, I want to export an array. I'm going to have the first user as an ID of 1. The name would be admin, and probably the email would be admin@gmail.com. These are going to be fake emails, for instance. And then I would have like a password also for it. And then probably maybe like a row. So in here, we have an ID, an name, an email, password, and a row. And basically, I'm going to create like more users underneath there. So I'm going to have like a user 2. Let's call this Adam. So I'm going to have a user 2 called Adam. And I'm going to have an email like adam@gmail.com. And in there, I simply want to call in the password Adam also. Now, basically, this is supposed to be coming from your database, okay? You should have this coming from your database, a real-world database like using MySQL or MongoDB, for instance. And if you want to see a video about that, simply hit down in the comment and say, make a video about MongoDB. And I'm going to make a video about MongoDB. Now, I simply just want to have like about 5 users in here so that you can basically see every one of them. So here I'm going to simply have john@gmail.com. And then, close off everything the right way and give it a password. Also, I've been forgetting to add like a role on each of this. So I can simply say the role is a user. In here, I can simply close this off and then close off my stuff. And the final user right here probably is going to be Jane. And then Jane, it's going to take the gmail.com email also. And in here, we simply want to set the password as well as set the role to user. And I would think that the other ones at the top right here also needs a row. Like for instance, Eve needs a row. And I think Adam right here also needs a row. As well, you can see that the admin do have a row. Now, when you have that, you can simply properly format your code. And then what you've done right now is created a JSON kind of database where you have like about 5 users in your database. We do have the admin, we have the users, we have this right here. Okay, so now the next thing we simply want to do is to create an endpoint where we can be able to log in into our Express application and then access some specific pages that are locked or pretty much some pages that are required for only admins to visit. So there you can see this. We have this and it just makes a lot more sense right there. So we have all of this. Now in here, basically, I just want the name of the user to come in right here. And I want this page to be protected, all right? I want this page to be protected, and I want to simply keep a login page also. So here, I'm simply going to say app.get, and we want to get like a login page. And then this page is going to simply be an async page. Then here, what we simply want to do is say rest.render login. Now, basically, we want to still create that login file right here. So we simply say login.ejs. And when we get that file, we can simply generate a boilerplate as well. So now here we have two endpoints. We have a home endpoint and we have a login endpoint. And if I should go to the browser and visit /login, it should still load just a blank page for us. As you can see, it loads this blank page. And to show you that it's actually that page, you can go to the login.ejs file, and in here we simply want to drop in a H1 saying login. And if I should refresh this, you see that I should say login right there by the side, which just makes sense. Now the next thing I simply want to do in this case is to basically start redirecting users to the login page once they are not authenticated. By default, they should be able to see this home page right here, which is hello world from EJS George, which by default will place the name of the user in here. But for now, we simply want to basically redirect them to the login page if we can't find any token or any sessions in there. All right. So now to get this started up, the next thing we simply need to do is to create a middleware. So right here, I simply want to go back to the site and call a utils folder. Now in this utils folder, I simply want to create a middleware. This middleware will be called checkauth.js. I'm going to say it's called checkauth.js. Now, what I simply want to do is to create a function. So this function, it's basically going to be a middleware. So if I call this the checkauth function, this checkauth function, it's basically going to take the rest, and then also going to take the next inside of it. And then if I should open this up like this, what I simply want to do is to say if, now let's just basically get the user first. So you can say const user, in this case would be equal to the rec.user. Now this is supposed to be available pretty much anytime we do authenticate a user. It is basically going to drop a user array inside of this place. And if that user is not there, we simply want to just redirect and then go back outside of this. So down here, we can simply say if not user, we simply want to return a rest.redirect back to the login page. That's all. So if there is no user in here, we simply just want to redirect. That is all we need to do. Now down here, we simply want to just export the checkauth function right there. That's what we want. We just simply say modules.export checkauth. Now back here in the index.js server, right in here where you have the app.get, what we simply want to do right here is to call the checkauth function which we've just created. And right here at the top, what we're simply doing is that we're saying checkauth equals to require, and then we're requiring the checkauth file from the actual utils folder here. So in here, we simply want to go in here and add a comma and then save. Now with this, if I should go back to the home page, you can see we are already on the login page. If I go back to the home page, we are coming back to the login page. If I go back to the home page, as you can see, and hit enter, we're getting back to the login page because it just cannot find a user within our session right there. And that is actually the first thing first, okay? We simply want to be able to actually be authenticated. This is the middleware. And this middleware basically will check if there's a user. And if there is no user, it is just going to push out of the whole thing. But that is not the only thing we want to check also. We want to check if there's a token. And if there happens to be a token, we simply want to assign the token and then continue with our request. So down here, what we simply want to do is to say, if there is no user, then we have this. Okay. Now, in most cases, you just don't want to check for the users directly. You just want to check for a token. And if you check for a token and you find out that pretty much there is no token, then you can now send the user out of the place. So what you can simply do is to say rest.cookie, rest.cookies.token. Now, basically, this should be able to read if you do have a token, right? So I can simply say this is a token right here. So I can simply say rec.cookies.token, which is one way you can get tokens. And instead of saying if not user, you simply want to say if not token. So that means if we don't pass any token, it is basically going to do this. But pretty much if there is a token, we simply want to move on next, all right? We want to move on next. But before we move on next, we simply want to decode the token, sending direct.user as the next parameter, and then we can now move on next. So to do this, we simply want to call it JWT. So we simply say JWT, which we can import at the top. Right here, we can simply say const JWT. This will be equal to require JSON Web Token, which is the package we've installed. Now, down here, we simply want to say, okay, we want JWT to pretty much verify this. And we can simply say JWT.verify, and it is basically going to verify our token. And then if they happen to be a token, we simply want to run this callback function right here. All right, we want to run this callback function. Otherwise, we simply just want to continue with our whole thing. So here, we can simply say if there happens to be an error, still redirect back to where you're going to. But if there is no error, we simply want to set the user to the decoded right there. All right, so that is what we want to do. We simply want to, first of all, get our token, and I make sure I spell that correctly. So if you can simply say res.cookies, the token, yeah. And if there is no token, redirect. But if there happen to be a token, what we want to do is verify it with JWT. And when we verify it with JWT, we can simply get our JWT secret, which we haven't created at the moment, but we're simply going to create that right now. So take the JWT secret right there and go to your env file. Right down here, you can simply add a comment and call this JWT. And then here, paste JWT, and you can set a secret. Now, the secret can be like any random number or text. Just make sure that it is actually unique. So one thing you can always do is to like generate a unique ID, which when you go to the terminal in VS Code, you can basically require the package called UUID, which we created for this. And basically when we require the UUID package, we simply just want to call when we require the UUID, we just want to call the v4 function right there. So we're simply going to require the UUID, and then we can simply call the v4 function. So if I require that, I simply want to call the v4 and then run it that way. And pretty much I simply want to close that. Or most of the times, if it's not working this way, you can just go into the browser, type in generate UUIDs, and look for one UUID generator pretty much in the browser there. Now you can see it's already giving us one. We can just copy that as our secret and paste it right in here. So that will be our JWT secret, making sure that it is always secured and hard for anybody to easily decode. Now when we have that, the next thing we simply want to do is to now check if our stuff still works well. So if I go back in here and pretty much go into this document, if I go to the home page, it still directs me. Now it says that cannot read properties of undefined reading token. Now this happens most of the time, okay? It's probably because we're trying to access token before we can actually use it. And in most cases, it doesn't really work like that. All right, so one thing you can do is basically instead of assigning a variable, you can simply just put it right here and say if there is pretty much no token, we simply just want to redirect you to the login page. So if not res.cookies.token, just redirect. So if I refresh this, now we don't have pretty much anything. It says it still cannot read this. Now, probably that's one reason why it cannot read this, and it's because we still need what we call a cookie parser. Now, basically in Express.js, you need something to actually read the cookie. And what you need for that is something called cookie parser. So we can simply say npm cookie parser. So basically this is going to always read your cookies pretty much anytime there is a cookie within Express. So run that and then do npm run dev. And now you can simply go back into this file, the index.js file. Now you can simply go back into this index.js file, and basically what we want to require there is the cookie parser. So we can simply say const cookie parser will be equal to require cookie parser. And all we just want to use right here, pretty much after the URL encoded, is to say app.use, and we want to use the cookie parser in there and call it just like a normal function like this. So when we call that, basically with that, you still have your cookies now. So if you should do rest the cookies pretty much in any of those folder, okay, if you should do rec the cookies in any of those folder, you should be able to access the cookies in that area. So if I should go back to the browser and give this a good refresh, you can see that it comes back to the login page, which means it now has access to the cookies. We can basically use the cookies pretty much anytime we want. All right. Now, even though you do this, and you can simply go back to the default method, which is just calling the cookies into this place like this. And if you should do that and still do the same thing, it is basically just going to read that properly. The last time it didn't read that properly because we needed to install cookie parser. Now, when we have that, the next thing we still need to do now is to make sure that we can actually log in a particular user, right? To make sure that we can actually log in a particular user. So to do this, we simply want to build out our login page. Now, right here in the login.ejs, we simply just want to create like a simple form and then use this form to actually log in a user. So with that, you can see that with the help of Copilot, I'm able to generate a quick form, which I can just basically add some details here. I can just add like a break tag here, and I need like 2 of those right here. So a break tag here, a break tag there, and yeah, just like that. Back in here, if I should refresh this, you see I get a simple login form, which I can basically use to log in and then find a particular user or something. So there we have this. Now in here, we simply want to make sure that our action is going to be set to /login. You can say /login/user, something like that. Personally, I like using /login/new. And then in the method, I'm simply going to set the method to post so that we can basically send all of this information. Right here, we simply want to call this an email here because we want to log in through the email. And then we want to log in with a name also. So the name for this is going to be email. The placeholder for this won't be username, but actually email address. And for the password, we can simply leave it as type password, name password, and placeholder password. If I should go back into the browser and pretty much refresh that, you can see that automatically my browser is filling up the details with the previous details that I had, which simply isn't really an issue, but we can simply use this. Now, if I should hit the login button right here, you see it says cannot post to /new/login, something like that. So we need to create this endpoint and actually use it to log in a particular user. All right. So in this video, I'm simply not going to be doing anything like hashing a password, but I'm sure you should be able to do that within your own terms. And if you also want a video about that, simply go down to the comment and say, show us how to make a full functional login system. Right here in the checkout, we don't need this. We can simply close that. For the login.ejs, we can close that and close this. All we basically need right now is to go back to our index.js, and we want to create a simple route down here. We want to say anytime we post to app.post, and we are simply heading to the /login/new route. We want to call an async function. And basically this function will take a rec and a res. And what it's basically going to do is it is going to get the data. So we can simply say const. And we want to simply get the email as well as the password from the rec, the body. So basically it's going to read the name, the email, and the password. And this email and password should always reference the name you have in here and the name you have in here, because that is very, very crucial you have it that way. So then when we have that, we can simply say if there is not email. So if there's no email or no password, we can simply redirect back to this place. And as well, we can pass in like a message here saying error, please fill in all fields. So we can just like do that right here. Now, when we have that right there, and we can simply say if, okay, email, it's another one, is not equal to, or if email is equal to an empty string also, that is one thing you can do. You can simply say a return and then say, please fill in all fields. Basically, what you want to do is to make sure that you have your email and password set before you try to actually log in a user. Now, when you have that, the next thing is that we need to validate the email. A simple regex command right here and validate the email. So we can simply say const validate, if I can spell correctly, regex, and that will be equal to this. Now, this is generated by Copilot, but basically it is a simple regex to validate your email addresses. So basically all you can do is, you can see that it starts with a slash and we go up, and then we can simply accept pretty much any characters from A to Z. In small cases, we can accept from A to Z. In capital cases, we can accept 0 to 9. And as well, we can as well accept a dot, an underscore, and a double underscore like that. And then also we want to put in like an @ which means there must be an @ right here. And we can accept an A to Z in small and big cases, as well as a 0 to 9, a dot, and as well as an underscore. And finally, right here, we simply want to say we need a .com, and we can simply cut that within the 2 to 6 range, because most of the times the domain at the end right here is going to be .co, .something, or at the longest, it can be like 6 letters right there. So if you don't understand how this works, you can basically go into pretty much any of the AI tools like GPT and tell it to generate like a regex to validate your email addresses, which I think should work well. If I use this, if I say chat GPT right here, I can simply go into it, and I'm not logged in at the moment. I can just simply tell it, write a JS regex validate string. Yeah, simple like that. Just give it some kind of context like this, and then hit the enter key. And basically, it is just going to write your email pattern for you. As you can see, there's a pattern right here, and you do have your email address right here also. So then when we have that, we can now test if this is actually correct. So that we can say if not validate regex.test. Basically, we want to test this email address. What we simply want to return is that the email address is kind of like invalid in this case. So if it doesn't validate it, it is going to return a rest.redirect, redirect back to the login page, and then say it's an invalid email address. Now moving on, the next thing we simply want to do is to now find the user and actually log in the user. Now to get that, we simply have a users database right here. And if we can find this, all we simply need to do is go to the very, very top of our stuff. And we simply want to require the users we created. So we can simply say require users. And these users will be coming from not our models actually, but from our utils folder. And instead of the utils, you do have, not the utils actually, from the database folder, instead of there, you do have your users right there. So you got these users right in here, which just makes sense. Now, writing down here, we simply want to check for these users. So we can simply say const, okay? What we simply want to do is to say const user, which is the user we are trying to log in. We can simply say is equal to users.find, and find is basically a JavaScript function. All we want to do is to find where the user is actually going to be the user email which you're signing in with. And for now, we just basically want to find in just the email. So we can simply say const users is equal to users, which is obviously this database right here, JSON database. And what we want to do is to use the find function to get each individual user. And when we get the individual users, we want to compare the email with the email that the user will be sending right in here. So when we get those two values and we see that they match, then we can simply proceed to verifying it. So if I say if not user, that means the user wasn't there, we can simply redirect and say rest the redirect, and we're going to go back to the /login ?error, and then we simply say invalid email address or password. And then if the user happens to be there, now the final thing we want to check is if the password matches. So we say if user.password is not equal to the password that has been sent, that means this password don't match. What we simply want to do is to still say rest or redirect, invalid email or password. Now, if everything matches correctly, that means we are able to sign in with our JWT. So what we can simply do is go over to the very, very top of our file again. Right in here, we simply want to say const JWT will be equal to require JSON Web Token. It's actually important that you do that right there. Now down here, we can simply say, okay, now JWT dot, and there's a sign method within JWT. And basically what we want to sign, it's the actual user. So we can simply say sign this user, and it's basically going to still take our .env.secret, okay, the actual JWT secret that we've created. And I think it's called JWT_secret. If you don't know about that, you can simply always go back into the env and make sure you get the secret from there. Now, the next thing we simply want to do is to set in like a list of options. The first option we can simply set is when it expires. So we can see it expires in about, you can set it to like an hour, a day, 10 minutes. So in this case, we can simply set it to like 1 hour by just putting in 1H like that. Now, after that, you simply want to call in a callback function. This callback function takes in an error as well as takes in a token. Okay, it takes in the error and the token. And then if there happen to be an error, what we simply want to do is just say, okay, we want to return or redirect back to the login and say an error occurred, because this is not a sign-in error, but an actual JSON error right there, as you can see. And then if it happens to be all good, what we can simply do is say rest.cookie. And then we simply want to set the token as the token which we're getting back from JWT. And then finally, we simply want to rest or redirect back to the home page. Now, I know that was a lot, but let's take it step by step one more time. So here, what we're simply doing is posting to this route. We're getting the email and the password from the body. We're checking if there's an email or a password. If not, we simply want to go back to the login file. And if there happens to be a blank email, you can simply do this. Okay. And now also one thing you can do is like put in this regex there, but it's not needed. So if the email is blank, you simply want to redirect. And the next thing is that we want to validate the email address to make sure it's an actual email address. So when we validate it this way, we can simply say, if not validate regex.test, that means it is basically going to test this. And if it happens to be true, we'll continue down the line. If it doesn't happen to be true, we'll just redirect back again. And here we can simply call in the users. This is the typical way you should fetch from a database. If you're using MySQL, this is where you run your select all from this. If you're using MongoDB, this is where you should do your users.find one or find many. And also if you're using Prisma, I think it's also called find one or find many also. Now here, what I'm simply doing is using JavaScript to find where this particular user matches the user with the email address being sent in. If there is no user, we're redirecting back. And if the password for the users don't match, we simply also redirecting back. Now, if everything happens to be true in this case, what we simply want to do is to sign in our new user, pass in our secret, then set when it expires, as well as get this callback function here. The callback function will tell us if there happen to be an error or actually there happen to be a token. So if there's an error, we can simply just return and say an error occurred. And as well, we can simply say rest.cookie.token if the token happens to be successful. And then finally redirect back to this place, which just makes sense. So now let's go in and test our actual login page. I'm going to give that a refresh and try logging in. Now, one thing you can see right here at the top when I try to log in with an email or password that is invalid is that you see it says invalid email password. Okay, invalid email or password. Now, from our database right here, which is the users right here, we can simply try to log in with one of this, maybe like the admin at Gmail, and use a fake password. So I'm simply want to using this. I can just set a password of like 1 to 0, which actually isn't the correct password. And if I try to log in again, you see that we still get the same message. If I should paste this and use the actual email address and the actual password and try to log in, you see now that we are right here within our homepage. Okay, we're right in here in the homepage. And if I should visit the homepage, it doesn't take me back to the login page. And this is because we have our token set up. And if we should go into the browser's development tools or developer tools by the side, and probably let's zoom in on that a little bit. If I head over to the applications tab and pretty much go into the cookies section, what you see is that it is basically going to create a new token for me. And basically this is the token that we're using to authenticate our users. All right. So we're using this token to authenticate our users. Now that is actually nice. The last part about this is that we want this name to be the actual name of the person who was signed in. So here we can simply go back into our index.js right here and look for the actual app.get route right here, which is this. And basically all we want to pass in here as the name should be the rec.user.name right in there. If I should pass it that in, you can see that it says admin right here. All right. Now the final thing I simply want to do is to just put in like a logout button here also. So if I should come in here, I can simply create a logout button in my index.ejs file. So if I create here, I can simply say button, and this should say a logout right there. Now, if I should refresh this, you can see that it says logout right here, which we're going to simply do later on. I'm simply going to add the logout feature also. But then you can see that we are able to log in with a particular user. If I should go in here and clear out the token from the developer tools in the browser, and I delete that, if I refresh this, you see that we are back here at the login page. So we can try using something else. I think I do have eve@gmail.com inside of it. So we can simply try using Eve to log in. And if I hit login, you can see that it logs in as Eve, which is just there. Makes a whole lot more sense like that, as you can see. So there. Now, creating the logout feature is not really hard. All you simply need to do is to come back into your index.js file, and pretty much we can put the logout feature down around here. So we can simply say app.get, and basically what we want to do is to say log out. And this logout, it's going to be an async function. It is going to take a ret and a res, and it's going to be a function like this. And basically all we need to do is to say res.clear cookie, which it's basically going to take our cookie and clear it from the browser, and as well redirect us back to the login page, which is just all we need for this. Now, if I should refresh this and give this a logout, you can see that it says cannot get logout. Simply want to refresh that the more. Simply saying, oh yeah, you need to do /logout right here. All right, you need to make sure that there is a slash right there. And if I go back into my page right here, hit enter and log out. Now you can see we are back on the login page. And if I should sign in with somebody else, I think I do have John inside. So if I say john@gmail.com and give the password of John, I think you can see that we are logged in with John, as you can see. As well, we can log out from John also. So the final thing about this is that we want to create a specified page for one particular user. Okay, we want to create a page where only one user can see, which is only just the admin. Now, right here, what we simply want to do is to take this down. Okay, we're simply going to duplicate this one page function. And we're going to simply call this the admin page function right here. All right. So the next thing we simply want to do is to make sure that only the admins do have access to this place. Now, what we simply want to do is to refresh this, go into here and say an admin. Now, if I try to visit it, you see that it comes back to this page, which means I need to log in with this email here. And if I log in and click on OK here, for instance, if I should visit /admin, you see that I still visit the admin. Though this is still showing the same message from the homepage, we get this admin. All right. So what I simply want to do is go into my views and let's create a new view. We're going to simply call this the admin.ejs. And here, all we simply want to just say is the admin page. All right. So when we say admin page, if I refresh this, give it a good refresh and make sure I go to my index.js and then render the admin template right here. If I refresh this, you can see that it says admin page admin, probably because this is just the name of the admin. But right in here in the admin.js, I can simply add in like something like this. I can even throw in like a break right there. So if I should refresh this, you can see it says admin page and then says admin, and you still have the logout button right here. But the thing is that I'm able to log in with the admin. As well, if I should log in with somebody else like Eve, for instance, Eve is not an admin, but Eve is still going to be logged in. And if I choose like visit /admin, you can see that Eve still shows up on the admin page. And that is not one thing I want. I want it to be that if I'm an admin, I'm only able to see the admin page, okay? The admin pages should be restricted to only the admins. So let's see how that is going to work now. Now back in here, what I simply want to do is that I want to set it that so that anytime I try to log in as somebody who is not an admin, it is going to basically bounce me out to the right pages that I'm on, okay? So if I'm an admin, it is going to redirect me to the admin. And if I'm a user, it is basically going to redirect me to the user. Simple stuff like that. So in here, we can simply go to users. And as you can see, when we were creating this database, we created this role value right here. And pretty much for every user, there is a role. Just the admin has the admin role. And pretty much every other person has a user role, which means these are normal users. So we want to be able to get to the admin page only when we log in as this place right here, as the admin. Now, moving on next, we simply want to go into our utils right here. We want to create a new function. This is going to basically say check admin, okay? And we can simply call that check admin.js. Now in here, we simply want to say const check admin. And it's basically going to take a res and a next function right there. And then what we simply want to do is to say if the rec.user.row is not equal to an admin, right there, all we basically want to do is to redirect the user back to the home page, which is our normal user route right there. Okay, so we just basically want to redirect back this user. But if this happens to be a user, all right, so if this happens to be an admin, we simply just want to go to the next function, which means call the next thing you want to call right there. So we do have this check admin right here. And here you can see that we do have Eve right in here. Now, if I go on the next function, it means that if this user happens to not be an admin, it is basically going to take you to the home page. But if you happen to be an admin, it is just going to call the next thing. And then right down here, we can simply say modules.export check admin. When we export that, we can simply go back to the index.js, which is our main server file. And in here, we simply want to add the check admin just in the routes that we need the admin to be. So we can simply say check admin right there. And make sure you add a comma also in there so that it doesn't look weird. So this is what we do have. We have the check auth and the check admin right here. Now, if I should go back, if everything works out well, and I refresh the page, Eve should be going to the home page right now. So if I refresh that, you can see that we are back here on the home page. And if I simply visit /admin again, it is basically just going to bring me back to the home page because Eve is not an admin. But if I log out and pretty much sign in as an admin, you can see we still get to this page, which I'm going to fix later on. I'm going to fix this issue. But if I should now go and navigate to the admin page, you can see that it takes me to the admin page right there, which means we are able to visit the admin as an admin. Now, finally, right here where we have our sign-in function right here, this function that is quite long, what we simply want to do is to still check the user. So if I say const, we simply want to check the row, and then I'm going to call it row URL. And we're simply going to use this ternary operator to say if the user, the row, is equal to an admin. Basically, all we want to do is to visit /admin. Otherwise, we want to just visit / right there. That's basically what we need. So we're simply just checking everything. And if the user is an admin, it's basically going to go to the admin URL, otherwise to the homepage. So here, if I should go on this, I can now simply put in the row URL in here, which means that it's going to check the role of the user and then log in the right thing for us. So there. Now, back in here, if I should refresh this, let me simply log out and log in as an admin. You see that we do get to the admin page immediately. And if I should log out and log in as maybe Eve, for instance, and call this Eve, and log in, you can see that we get to the homepage right here, which is just nice. So there's it, guys, how you can do JWT authentication within Express. If you've enjoyed this video so far, give it a like down below and also hit the subscribe button to learn more things like this. And also, at any point in this video where you don't understand pretty much anything, you can always go down to the comments and drop your questions, drop your things. If you want more videos explaining in depth how EGS works and pretty much how your JavaScript middlewares and pretty much things like that work, you can simply go down into the comments and drop a comment, okay? Ask me questions down there. Pretty much open to the comments. As you can see, I've got barely any following. So I'm going to simply answer pretty much all of the comments that you're going to drop down there. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.